In 2018, I made a video covering all the different Sonic racing games in honor of Team Sonic Racing coming out. That video was a lot of fun to make, but looking back at it, it probably was the worst review video I have made to date. I talked about every racing game from Sonic Drift all the way to All-Stars Transformed in like 7 minutes, so that was not nearly enough time to go into depth about any of those games. I just feel like I rushed everything, and one trilogy in particular didn't get enough shine in that video in my opinion, especially considering how much I just love those games. Most of those games. Sonic the Hedgehog is the fastest thing alive. At least that's what his intro song tells me, and if I can't trust that, then who can I trust? But if you had to take one guess as to how this blue blur were to race against his friends, you'd probably immediately think of Sonic R. It makes the most sense. If Sonic can run so fast, of course he would race on foot. I mean, I can't imagine him racing in cars or something. Oh, fuck. But what if I told you that the greatest racing game of all time doesn't involve cars or running, and it was just the most out of left field idea the Sonic team probably has ever had? Let me introduce you to Sonic Riders. Sonic Riders was first released on February 21st, 2006 on the Xbox, PlayStation, and GameCube, while followed shortly on a release on PC just a few months later. As what seems like 2000 Sonic tradition, the game opens with a hype lyrical song with one of the best intros I have ever seen. I feel ready to run through a fucking brick wall after that. But then the title screen happens and all the hype just goes away. What the fuck? This game has some of the most variety of modes you can choose to play from. Obviously, you have the main big mode of Grand Prix or Free Race, which is basically just your average race against your friends or computer if you're lonely. You have the Hero Cup and the Babylon Cup, which each consist of 5 races of courses that are almost the same, but with some slight twists in the Babylon Cup. I wish the courses were a little more varied between the cups, but they are based directly on the story mode because yes, this game actually has a non-garbage story mode, which might be the first in racing game history. The story mode starts with Sonic and his friends searching for a Chaos Emerald when they run into a group of rogues who got it before them. Sonic chases them, but they escape on their hoverboards, or as the game calls it, Extreme Gear. They then learn about a tournament that Eggman is holding to see who the fastest on Extreme Gear is, and the rogues that they met earlier are competing in it. So they all join to try and win the Chaos Emeralds. The story takes you through multiple courses to beat the rogues and get the treasure of Babylon Garden, which leads to a battle with the Babylon Guardian. Although it's basically just a race to see who can ram face first into him. It's so much fun. Plus, you get to experience it from both the heroes and rogues' point of views with slightly different courses, which makes it not as repetitive as the courses change time of day, change color, or just completely freeze hell over. Easily one of the best stories Sonic has had since 2000. Although that's not saying much. This game has the best and most action-filled races I have ever experienced. They even start off exciting with trying to time your run-up as the clock counts down, but if you go too early, then you get shamed by getting electrocuted and having to start slow. But once the real racing starts, you get to zoom through the streets, do crazy jumps, and experience some of the worst and slippery controls ever. As much as I love this game, I can't deny that the controls definitely take some getting used to because the first time you play, you'll be shocked by how far you move with just the slightest touch of the control stick. The controls are so sensitive, and it takes longer to get used to them than something like Mario Kart, but once you do get the hang of it, you're in for an amazing time. But also, since we are quickly talking about the negatives, why the f*** did they make these control stick spinning sections? I thought we stopped child violence after Mario Party 1. Luckily, these are no longer than like 5 to 10 seconds in each course, so it's not that bad, but it still hurts like a bitch if you have a controller like I did. This is the controller that I used to play this game growing up. I'm surprised I didn't go to the hospital. Every stage also has some sort of shortcut that requires you to perform a super jump by holding back of the control stick and holding A. Sometimes it just gives you a shorter path, lets you get a certain item, or completely skip the control stick spinning sections, which are just the best ones. Every course also has shortcuts for each ability that a character has. Every character is either a speed, flying, or power character, which lets you grind on rails, fly through rings, or punch obstacles out of the way respectively. This lets you play the game completely different than someone else and provides multiple routes for each course, so it's not the same every time. And the music is just, I love every theme in this game, and Sand Ruins without a doubt is the best racing theme I have ever heard in my life, and you cannot convince me otherwise. The fast-paced action with all the different options you can choose from makes this by far the best racing experience that I have ever had. The game even has so much more than that with its mission mode. There are missions for Storm, Wave, and Jet, which range in difficulty and take place across all the courses. These are all short and tons of fun with an actual reward of giving you some brand new characters. Most of the unlockable characters make sense with classic Sonic characters like Shadow, Cream, and Rouge, but playing the missions lets you play as Ulala from Space Channel 5 and Ai from Super Monkey Ball. I don't know who the f came up with this idea, but I love them. Also, if you get a gold medal on every mission, you can unlock Supersonic, which is basically just an instant win button. And I know I mentioned the extreme gear earlier, but there are actually tons that you can purchase from the shop using the rings that you can collect while racing. They all have different stats, and some can even let you have different abilities, like the Omnipotence Bike, which lets you grind, fly, and have power, which is some complete overpowered bullshit, but at least it's one of the most expensive things that you can buy. Sonic Riders was definitely the first time I played a Sonic racing game and actually thought, yeah, that was fun. Sonic Drift was mediocre at best, and Sonic R is still the only racing game that makes sense with Sonic running on foot, but it still controls like molasses. I spent countless hours playing this game as a kid with both my friends and my cousin, so you can just imagine my excitement when just a few years later on the Wii, we got a sequel titled Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity was released on January 8th, 2008 for both the Wii and PlayStation 2 and is a direct sequel to the first Sonic Riders game. The simplest way to describe this game is they took everything from the original and expanded and improved upon it. Well, except for, why the f did they ruin the best part of the first game? I mean, I know why they changed it because this game focuses more on the story, but still, you could have had a way hyper and more exciting intro than this confusing whatever the hell it is. Well, if they're going to focus more on the story, it better be amazing. And I do gotta say, Zero Gravity definitely has a more in-depth story with more lore that I unironically love. Of course, just like the first game, you can experience the story from both the heroes and Babylon Rogues' point of view. Because yeah, the Babylon Rogues are back, which means we get to see more of Storm being a dumbass, which is always a good time. Sonic and his friends learn about a legendary item called the Ark of the Cosmos, which can collect matter and control gravity. Who would have guessed a game with zero gravity in the title would be about controlling gravity? Sonic then finds out that the Babylon Rogues are also after this artifact, which leads to them competing for the Ark. Also, there are some robots chasing after them that look a lot more intimidating than those Peter Griffin looking robots from the first game. The story follows the same trends as the first game, with the Babylon story having basically the same tracks as the hero story, but just more difficult with some crazy twist like day to night for literally every fucking course. They did also change the order that you race the tracks in, with you starting at Gigan Device, which is the alternative course for the last race in the hero story. Then it immediately goes back to the normal order, so I don't know what the hell the point of doing that one out of order was. The story climaxes with Babylon Garden reappearing and one of the robots taking the Ark of the Cosmos towards it and causing a black hole. So Sonic and the gang does what any white person would do, go towards it. They take on the robot's giant new form, which is basically just a carbon copy of the first game with needing just to ram into it. But this is in a way cooler environment, moving at way higher speeds and with some bomb-ass music. As much as I will always stan the original Sonic Riders, this story mode is 10 times better and you just cannot argue otherwise. Oh yeah, I probably should talk about what changes they made to the racing gameplay since that's kind of important for a racing game. The game is more or less the same with everyone racing on extreme gear, but there are two major differences with gravity control and gear change. Gravity is obviously the biggest part of the game with tons of different uses. Once you collect enough gravity points, or GP for short, you can perform a gravity dive, which is basically just a slingshot down the track as fast as possible. It also affects other objects on the track so you can bump into them and get a little burst of speed. There's also usually one specific location that you want to use this move for, which sort of replaces the control stick spinning sections, which is great because I don't know about you, but I find it kind of hard to spin a control stick on a controller without one. You can also use the gravity to reach secret paths or make sharp turns, which is without a doubt the best use of the gravity in these games because these hoverboards are near impossible to turn without it. The gear change function basically just allows you to power up your extreme gear throughout the race by collecting enough rings. It will increase your GP gauge, similarly to the air tank from the first game, as well as allow you to grind, fly, or use power abilities because you don't get those from the start. This definitely makes collecting rings way more important because you just really stand no chance without them. Also, side note, why the hell did they make it so speed, flying, and power are all tied to a specific extreme gear? Speed just stays the same on a hoverboard, but power is always on a bike and flying is on some weird aircraft thing. I don't even know what the f it technically is. I don't mind that they're all different now, it just never really made sense to me why they made that change in the first place. But other than those things, the gameplay is pretty much the same, except you can use the Wii's motion controls to steer, but that just makes me want to hurt someone. This game added so many brand new things to both the gameplay and the story, so it has to be superior, right? No, because they removed the best part of the original game and got rid of mission mode. Okay, they didn't actually remove it, but they just made it a lot more dumbed down and not even remotely as fun as the first game, with just making it only Babylon and Hero Story with not anything specific to any of the characters. But they did add 3 new modes called Survival Mode, Survival Relay, and Survival Ball. These games are basically just shoot the shit out of each other, tag team race using extreme gear as a baton, and just play soccer. No offense to these modes, I actually have had tons of fun playing all of them, but it's just not the same as mission mode and there was literally no reason to remove it. At least to make up for it, they added some brand new characters like Silver and Blaze, which are some great Sonic characters. But also, remember how the first game gave us Ulala and Ai, which made no sense? Yeah, well this game one-upped them and added Amigo from Samba de Amigo and Billy Hatcher. Whoever was in charge of coming up with these ideas deserves a raise. Zero Gravity is basically just the first game but bigger, better, and unfortunately badder. The racing mechanics themselves feel better, but the actual controls are way too stiff and would be unbearable without the gravity mechanics. I do miss mission mode, but the other modes they added were pretty unique and added some nice variety. In all honesty, I do believe this is a slightly better game than the first game, although none of the official reviews will agree with me on that, but the changes they made had the game stand out from the rest, and I will always recommend this game to people. Most of the changes that they made to Zero Gravity were great additions, and they just made every fan want a third game to complete this fantastic trilogy. And the Sonic team answered and gave us all the game that we asked for, but not the game that we wanted. Oh yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Sonic Free Riders was released on November 4th, 2010 exclusively on the Xbox 360. Why was it only released on the Xbox instead of the Wii and PlayStation, you may ask? To that, I have a very simple answer. I want to die! Instead of using the perfectly good and arguably one of the best controllers that the Xbox 360 already had, they decided to make us actually get exercise to play this game. Who do they think they are? The games went from purely a controller to some added motion controls on the Wii to now acting like Tony Hawk with everything we have to do. Now before anybody gets the wrong idea, I do think this wasn't a terrible idea to consider using full body motion controls for Sonic Riders. I always wished I was in the game so I could ride hoverboards and race, so I don't mind the idea for this game. My problem is the fact that the game can only be played like this. This is the third game in the series, and now you completely change the controls? I would totally be on board, no pun intended, if this was a separate mode in the game and you could still play using only a controller. That would have made so many people happier and wouldn't make people buy a separate accessory that they probably won't use for anything else. I know what that's like. Now, I do have to be fair here and say that the controls aren't the absolute worst in the world. Obviously, I would much rather use a controller, but for what it is, it works fine. They took out any aircraft or skate extreme gear in this game, and now you only have the options for a board and a bike. For the board, you need to tilt your body in the right direction to move, but you actually have to stand sideways to act like you're on a skateboard. You also need to crouch to charge a jump and jump with a spin with good timing off of jumps to perform tricks, which is kind of fun, until you get a little excessive and twist your ankle. The bike, on the other hand, makes you look even stupider than using the board. Yes, that is possible. By holding your arms out like you're riding a bike. You turn by moving your arms the right direction, and jumping works pretty much the same as the board. These controls work well enough, but obviously a controller would have been better. It actually surprised me how well the controls worked because I expected them to be a pile of dog dookie when it was only just a small turd instead. It could be more responsive, but what can you expect from Kinect controls? I just wish you didn't have to look like either Michael Jackson or Mermaid Man with no in-between. And the abilities from the other game are also back, but you need to perform actions to do them. Grinding just has you lean, Air Ride has you T-pose, and Power just has you beat the shit out of your TV. The plot of the game is basically a carbon copy of the first game, but slightly bigger. Eggman hosts a second World Grand Prix, but this time has 4 teams competing instead of just 2. The new teams are Team Rose with Amy, Cream, and Vector, and Team Dark with Shadow, Rouge, and a recolor of the robots from the first game. You get to play through the tournament as all 4 teams until Eggman reveals that he used the blue robot to collect racing data so that he could beat all of them. Eggman then loses because he never wins, and the blue robot breaks down and reveals to be Metal Sonic. Yeah, can we go back to E-10000B? Oh yeah, that's the blue robot's name. You can probably tell why I just call it the blue robot. Sonic then needs to defeat Metal Sonic in a race, which he obviously does. Eggman runs away without giving a prize, and all the racers sort of just deal with it because they had fun? That just makes no sense. I don't care how much fun I had. If I was promised a reward for winning a tournament, I better get my fucking prize. This game definitely has the simplest story of the 3, and it seemed like they tried to keep with the trend of twists at the end with the reveal of Metal Sonic, but nobody cared enough about the story for this to have any impact. But hey, at least they didn't reuse Babylon Garden for the 3rd time, so I'll give them credit for that. This might be the only game in this series where I don't actually enjoy playing through the story mode. And the worst part is, this game probably has the least content of any of the games too. At least they did give us online races, which allowed for up to 12 racers, which is kind of a cool idea, and they did let you taunt other racers by speaking into the Kinect microphone. Fuck you! I don't think they realized what they did. But even though that's kind of cool, the game still doesn't have mission mode, so who really cares about this? And honestly, who the hell would want to get caught playing Sonic Free Riders online in 2019? That's almost as bad as getting caught watching porn. No, I take it back. It is worse because you can at least explain why you're doing that. The Sonic Rider series will always be one of my personal favorites just for the sheer fact of how much time I spent on them as a kid. Between the holes in my hands, the janky motion controls, and all the broken ankles, these are still incredible games. And of all the Sonic games I have played, these are still the best. And also Free Riders. These games have the freshest take on a racing game from any major franchise I have ever seen, with the only exception being maybe Kirby Air Ride. Riding a hoverboard is something that every kid thinks is cool, and these games exemplified that feeling perfectly. Sure, the controls aren't the best in any of the games between the slippery controls, then stiff controls, and then this shit, but the actual content of the games makes up for it. The original has such a fun story mode with quick and exciting missions to give you countless hours of fun. Zero Gravity adds much more lore and new racers to give a fun and unique adventure. And Free Riders had... it had online. I will always recommend these games to friends and people looking for a fun game for a group of people. It is infinitely better than Mario Kart, and I think I might be the only person who wants a new Sonic Riders game over Mario Kart 9. I would lose my mind, unless it's Free Riders 2, in which case I will also lose my mind just in a different way. If you've never played these games, definitely give them a chance. You won't regret it, and Sonic Free Riders can at least give you a bit of a workout. It really can help you with pretty much any active thing you need. I personally am using it as a dance trainer.